Imagine looking at your own family tree and finding out someone went back and carefully erased every single mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother.
Right, like you're just left looking at a tree made entirely of fathers.
Exactly. Fathers somehow giving birth to sons. I mean, it makes absolutely no biological sense, right? You would
I
immediately know you were looking at a manufactured fiction.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, today we were looking at how ancient history did exactly that to the story of the entire universe.
It completely changes how you view the foundation of our civilization, honestly. When you realize the maternal lineage of the cosmos didn't just fade away naturally, but was actively cut out of the record.
You start seeing the missing pieces everywhere.
You really do.
And that is exactly the landscape we are walking into today for this deep dive. Our mission is to explore this, staggering, paradigm-shifting premise presented in a really powerful testimony-style essay. It's titled, "You Killed My Body, Reshaped and Stole It From Me."
Yeah, and it's important to note this isn't just a solitary piece of poetry. It is backed up by decades of really rigorous historical and archaeological scholarship.
Right.
We are looking at the work of people like Maria Gimbutas, who literally dug up the physical proof of early goddess cultures in Eastern Europe,
Uh-huh.
and Elaine Pagels, who translated the Lost Gnostic Gospels, and Merlin Stone, who chronicled the ancient religions of the sacred feminine.
So the core argument running through all of this source material is that the primordial creator of the cosmos was originally a mother goddess.
Yes.
But her disappearance from our modern religious frameworks wasn't, some accidental loss over time. It was a deliberate, systematic theological murder.
That's the exact phrase, a theological murder.
Okay, let's unpack this,
Yeah.
because this isn't just ancient history. The text argues that this specific erasure is a foundational restructuring of how humanity views the entire world.
It changes everything, our relationship to the earth, to our bodies, to each other.
Now, before we jump into the deep end, I want to make a quick note for you listening. Our goal here is to impartially explore the profound theological and historical arguments made by the author and these cited scholars.
Right, we're putting on our historian hats today.
Exactly. We are navigating these ancient traditions to uncover the ideas presented in the text without endorsing any specific religious viewpoint. We're just here to look at the evidence of this ancient erasure and to examine the blueprints of how our modern worldview was constructed.
And to understand the sheer scale of the erasure, we first have to understand what was actually erased.
Because it wasn't what we usually picture.
Not at all. Because if you go back to the earliest archaeological records, we're talking the Paleolithic and Neolithic era, stretching across Anatolia, the Indus Valley, Old Europe, the feminine divine wasn't what we typically imagine today.
Right, she wasn't just some, minor deity of the hearth or subordinate wife handing a male sky god his thunderbolts.
Far from it. She wasn't a metaphor for domestic fertility either. She was the cosmos, the absolute totality of existence. You look at artifacts like the Venus of Willendorf or the Sleeping Lady of Malta.
Oh, or that incredible seated goddess of Çatalhöyük, right? The one flanked by lions, giving birth right there on her throne.
Yes. The text points out that these aren't just primitive art projects or like prehistoric pornography, as some used to claim. This is early human theology rendered in limestone and ochre.
So it was a completely different way of seeing the world.
Entirely holistic. The universe was born from a female body, and that body was the sacred living source of all existence.
So before this major shift happened, did different cultures just have different names for her?
They did, yeah, but the core concept remained identical. Like in ancient Sumer, she was Namu, the primordial sea from which everything emerged.
Okay.
And in Egypt, she was Neith, the self-created weaver of the world. She wasn't a resource that someone else used to build the world. She was the source itself.
Right. Everything was made of her flesh and her waters.
Exactly. But then, as the essay details, the texts begin to change. And this is where the murder actually happens, recorded right there in the mythology.
It's documented in the stories they left behind. So how does a culture go about murdering a cosmic mother?
Well, the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish, written around the 12th century BCE, is really the smoking gun here.
Okay.
In the earliest strata of Babylonian cosmology, the primordial mother dragon, the salt ocean, was Tiamat.
She was the first being.
Right, the mother of all the gods. But the Enuma Elish dramatically rewrites the cosmos. A young, aggressive, male hero god named Marduk goes to battle against Tiamat.
And he defeats her.
He defeats her, and then he literally splits her body in two.
Good Lord.
Yeah. He uses one half of her corpse to create the sky. the other half to create the earth, and he pierces her eyes to become the sources of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers.
That imagery is so unbelievably brutal. I mean, she goes from being the self-generating source of life to becoming dead raw material.
Yeah.
She is violently downgraded from a living source to a passive resource. It's like a hostile corporate takeover.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like, the new CEO doesn't just fire the founder, he steals her patents, dismantles her factory to build his own, and completely rewrites the company history so it looks like he invented the product.
He literally uses her assets to build his empire.
Which actually brings up a question. If you're Marduk and you're rewriting the cosmos to prove how powerful you are, why keep her body parts at all?
Right, like why not just start from scratch?
Exactly. Why not just write her out completely and say, you made the universe out of nothing?
What's fascinating here is they couldn't write her out. Not yet.
Why not?
Because in the minds of the people at that time, everyone implicitly knew the world was made of her.
Oh, I see.
The earth under their feet, the rivers they drank from, the oceans they sailed, that was undeniably her body. They couldn't just pretend it wasn't there.
So they had to account for it somehow.
Yes. So they had to change the narrative of how it got there. They couldn't erase her, so they turned her into the chaos monster.
Oh.
They had to frame the primordial, generative feminine as a chaotic, dangerous, irrational force. And they positioned the organized, rational male intellect as the hero that had to conquer and tame that female chaos for civilization to even exist.
Wow. So they took the mother of everything and turned her into the enemy of progress.
Exactly.
And the Greeks did something very similar, didn't they? Just with a bit more philosophical gloss.
Much more sophisticated, yes, but the exact same underlying mechanism. In Hesiod's theogony, you have Gaia, the primordial earth mother, who is very quickly subordinated by her male children.
Right.
But the ultimate symbol of this shift is Zeus. Zeus swallows the goddess of wisdom, Metis, while she's pregnant.
He just eats her.
He completely consumes her, and then he miraculously gives birth to Athena, the new goddess of wisdom, straight out of his own head.
He literally swallows female wisdom and regurgitates it as male intellectual brilliance.
It's the ultimate intellectual theft.
So, if the Greeks and Babylonians kept her body parts around as the physical earth, how did we eventually get to the modern religious concept, where God is totally invisible and bodiless? That required a much more radical erasure than just chopping her up.
And this is where the archaeological evidence really challenges the standard narrative we've all been taught.
Right, we transitioned from mythic violence in Babylon to state-sponsored institutional erasure in ancient Israel.
Yes. The text breaks down unambiguous evidence that the ancient Israelites originally worshipped a dual-gendered divine.
This absolutely blew my mind when reading the sources. Walk us through what they actually found in the dirt.
So in the 8th century BCE, at sites like Kuntalat Ardrud and Khirbet el-Kham, archaeologists uncovered inscriptions that explicitly bless Yahweh and his Asherah.
Is Asher?
Yes, Asherah wasn't a lesser being or a mere angel. She was his sacred feminine counterpart. Her symbol was a wooden pole or a living tree. A living tree. And this living tree wasn't just hidden away in some fringe countryside cult. It was planted right there in the central courtyard of the Jerusalem temple.
Wow.
For everyday people, the sacred feminine was rooted at the very heart of their religion.
So what happened to the tree? How did an entire society go from worshiping at the feet of a divine mother tree to a strictly patriarchal monotheism?
The turning point was the Deuteronomistic reforms.
Okay, what were those?
Under King Josiah in the 7th century BCE, there was a deliberate, violent purge. Imagine being a commoner during this time. For generations, your family has prayed to the Queen of Heaven, leaving offerings at rural shrines and high places under the shade of sacred trees.
It's just normal life for you.
Completely normal. And suddenly, royal soldiers arrive with axes. The Asherah poles in the temple are chopped down and burned. The rural high places are systematically destroyed.
That is terrifying.
It was a massive cultural trauma. And the text of what would become the Hebrew Bible was heavily edited by the priestly class to frame this trauma not as the tragic erasure of the sacred feminine, but as a righteous, necessary restoration of pure monotheism.
They didn't just smash the statues, they scrubbed the hard drive.
Exactly.
They criminalized the very memory of her. But the essay introduces this incredible concept of intellectual theft. Because once you erase the mother goddess, you still have a major theological problem. You have to explain how the universe got here.
Right. You need a creation story.
So the attributes that were inherently feminine were suddenly reassigned to a masculine god.
Let's look at the cornerstone of Western theology, creation ex nihilo, or creation out of nothing.
Right.
We are taught that a bodiless male god speaking the world into existence from an empty void is the ultimate act of divine power. But the essay points out that self-generation, bringing forth life from within your own substance, was originally the defining power of the goddess.
It's parthenogenesis.
Yes, it directly mirrors the biological reality of human birth. By having a bodiless male god create from nothing, patriarchal theology appropriated the female body's most essential, awe-inspiring power, but stripped the actual female body out of the equation entirely.
But wait, I have to jump in here and genuinely challenge this premise for a second.
Sure.
Couldn't the shift to a male disembodied god just be the result of a society becoming more philosophically advanced? Like, why assume it was a malicious theological murder or intellectual theft rather than just human progress?
That's a very common counterargument.
I mean, moving from literal earth cults and fertility statues to abstract, bodiless thought, isn't that just a civilization growing up?
If we connect this to the bigger picture that the source text is drawing, the author argues that labeling this shift as natural evolution or progress is actually the final layer of the cover-up.
Really? How so?
Because it wasn't an evolution towards something objectively higher or better. It was a deliberate political shift designed to consolidate power. It was a calculated move away from embodied material generation where the earth, the flesh, and women are sacred toward a disembodied, hierarchical, masculine intellect that rules from above. It required the active, violent suppression of an entire way of knowing and being.
That makes a lot of sense when you look at what happened to the concept of wisdom. Wisdom was universally feminine in the ancient world. Yet Athena, Isis, the Hebrew Chokmah,
Right.
wisdom was feminine because it was understood as holistic, emergent, and relational. But as the text notes, the new masculine god became omniscient by absorbing that feminine wisdom, just like Zeus swallowing Metis.
Yes, and even the primordial waters get demoted.
Oh, true.
Look at the very first lines of Genesis 1.2. It says, the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. That specific Hebrew word for the deep, the waters, is tehom.
Tehom.
Linguistically, it is a direct cognate with Tiamat, the Babylonian mother dragon.
Wow, so she's still there.
The great mother ocean is still there at the dawn of creation, but she's being completely neutralized. She is reduced to an unnamed passive backdrop for the active male god's spirit to act upon.
But you can't just fully delete something that is that fundamental to human psychology and biological reality. You can chop down the trees, you can burn the shrines, but the memory remains.
It always does.
Which brings us to the survival of the goddess. She went underground. I love this part of the deep dive, seeing where she hid in plain sight.
She was incredibly resilient because, as the text argues, she is woven into the very fabric of human experience. You see her survive in beautifully encrypted forms.
Like where?
Well, in the mystical Jewish tradition of Kabbalah, she emerges as the Shekinah, the feminine indwelling presence of God on earth.
Oh, fascinating.
And in the Gnostic text that the Orthodox Church tried so desperately to burn, she is revered as Sophia, divine wisdom.
And the most massive, visible example of her survival has to be the popular veneration of Mary.
Oh, absolutely.
The history of how the church handled Mary, especially at the Council of Ephesus, is absolutely wild.
The Council of Ephesus is a perfect example of this psychological tug-of-war. In 431 CE, the council officially declared Mary to be Theotokos, the God-bearer.
Okay.
Now, the city of Ephesus just happened to be the ancient epicenter for the worship of Artemis, one of the greatest iterations of the goddess.
What a coincidence.
Right. When the church made this official declaration about Mary, the local population erupted in massive street celebrations. They paraded with torches.
They threw a huge party.
They did,
Mm.
because they knew exactly what was happening. The goddess they loved had returned to them, just wearing a new Christian name.
But the text makes a crucial point about the mechanism of how the church handled this. They realized they couldn't stop the masses from venerating a divine mother, so they allowed it, but they contained her.
They boxed her in.
Yes. They declared her a perpetual virgin. Think about the psychology of that. They needed her womb. They literally used her physical body to bring God into the world, but they completely stripped her of her sexuality and her own divine independent agency.
Right. She was permitted to be a pristine vessel, but never a source.
That is the exact mechanism of control.
It really is. But even with those intense theological controls, she kept breaking through the cracks. You see it globally.
Like where
You
else?
see it in Christian mystics like Julian of Norwich in the 14th century, who had these profound, orthodox, shattering visions of Jesus acting as a mother.
Wow.
You see it fully alive and unconcealed in Hinduism, specifically in Shaktism, where Adiparashakti isn't a subservient consort to a male god. She is the supreme absolute reality from which all the male gods emerge.
She is the source again.
Exactly. And fundamentally, the text argues, she survived within the embodied experience of women themselves. The physical body remembers what the written text tried to erase.
So what does this all mean? If you are listening to this right now on your commute or while doing the dishes, why isn't this just a fascinating bit of ancient Mesopotamian trivia?
Right. Why care today?
Exactly. Why does the Babylonian dismemberment of a water dragon matter to you right now in the 21st century?
Because we are living in the direct daily fallout of this theological shift.
The fallout.
Yes. The essay argues that the massive existential crises we are facing in the modern world are directly downstream from this original murder. Let's look at the ecological catastrophe.
Okay.
When you conceptually transform the Earth from a living divine mother into inert, dead, raw material left over from a cosmic battle, well, you can't strip mine a goddess.
Wow, yeah.
You can't pump poison into the veins of a sacred mother, but you can absolutely exploit a passive resource.
Because it's just dead matter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The desacralization of the Earth paved the exact psychological and cultural road for modern industrial extraction. Every clear-cut forest and polluted river begins with the idea that the Earth is dead matter meant for us to dominate.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the social impact is just as massive and just as direct. The desacralization of women's bodies directly laid the theological groundwork for systemic patriarchal subordination.
Oh, for sure.
If female biology, parthenogenesis, and maternal creation are associated with sin, or framed as the chaos monster rather than the sacred source of life, then human society is going to reflect that hierarchy.
It has to.
We built our legal and social systems on the premise that the masculine intellect is meant to rule over feminine nature.
And it deeply infected our intellectual lives, too. By masculinizing wisdom, by forcing that shift from the holistic, intuitive, embodied knowledge of the goddess to the disembodied, strictly rational, top-down knowledge of a masculine god, we created a Western rationalism that actively devalues intuition.
We just stopped trusting it.
We actively devalue our physical connection to the world. We literally split the mind from the body and elevated the mind as divine while punishing the body as sinful.
But the text ends on a note of, well, I wouldn't call it just hope. I'd call it an awakening. The argument is that she is returning now,
Yes.
not as some reversed hierarchy. It's not about putting a goddess on top to replace a god on top.
Because domination and hierarchy aren't her nature. The return being described here is an awakening of immanent embodied wisdom.
Imminent, meaning like right here within us.
Exactly. It's the sudden widespread realization that the sacred isn't just up there in the sky dictating rules from a throne. The sacred is right here. It's in the dirt. It's in our cells. It's in the ongoing generative process of life itself.
Okay, to wrap this up, we have traveled an immense distance today.
We really have.
We started in the Paleolithic totality, where the goddess simply was the cosmos. We witnessed the violent dismemberment of her body in texts like the Enuma Elish, and we tracked the institutional erasure and intellectual theft by the Abrahamic reforms under King Josiah. We followed her fragmented survival in underground mysticism and the contained veneration of Mary, and we've landed on the very real modern consequences. The ecological devastation and the social hierarchies born entirely of her absence.
And this raises an important question, something we really need to think about today.
What's that?
Well, the text argues that the ecological crisis and the crisis of meaning are downstream of this primordial theological wound. But let's take that a step further and look at the technology we are building today.
Okay.
Think about artificial intelligence. We are currently pouring billions of dollars into building a new omniscient mind in the cloud. A superintelligence completely detached from a physical body, detached from the earth, and detached from human emotion.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
It makes you wonder, are we just repeating the exact same intellectual theft we committed thousands of years ago?
Wow.
Are we once again worshiping a disembodied intellect while completely ignoring the physical world that actually sustains us?
That is the exact thought we want to leave you with today. When you look at the systems around you, the way we treat the planet, the way we treat each other, and the technology we are starting to worship, remember the erased maternal lineage of the cosmos.
Keep questioning it.
Keep questioning the stories you've been told are just the way things are, and maybe take a moment to look down at the earth under your feet and remember what it used to be called. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.